You have been carrying more than you admit. There are mornings when you wake already tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of another day that looks exactly like the one before it. You feel stretched thin, pulled in every direction, yet somehow falling behind. And you ask yourself in silence, how long can I keep living like this? You try to be strong for your family, but there are moments when you stand alone in a quiet room and feel the pressure in your chest, pressure you cannot explain, pressure you cannot escape. You wonder why your problems keep piling up faster than your strength can grow. You wonder why even small setbacks seem to strike you harder than they should. At times you feel ashamed of how easily life overwhelms you. You were not supposed to be this tired, this worried, this uncertain. You were supposed to be further ahead by now. You were supposed to have more money saved, more doors open, more pride in what you built. Instead, you feel trapped inside a life you promised yourself you would outgrow. You look at your family and try to hide the storm inside you. You don't want them to see you worried, afraid, or defeated, and yet they sense it. Your partner sees it in your eyes before you speak. Your children notice the heaviness in your voice even when you smile. They do not say it, but they feel when the foundation of the home is trembling. And perhaps the deepest pain is this: the problems you face are starting to shape the way you think. You catch yourself expecting disappointment. You brace for setbacks before they arrive. You fear that one more hardship might be enough to break you. A man can endure much, but he cannot endure forever without rising. If this is how you feel, then hear me well. You are not weak. You are simply standing too low. And when a man stands low, even the smallest problems strike him like giants. But when he rises, truly rises, he looks back and wonders how those same problems ever frightened him at all. This speech is for the man who is tired of being struck from every direction, the man who is tired of waking up already behind, the man who looks at his life and whispers, "There must be more than this," the man who is ready to climb to a height where nothing, no fear, no doubt, no setback, can touch him. I have studied such men. I have walked beside them in their lowest moments and their greatest victories. I have seen clerks rise to command industries. I have seen laborers rise to wealth. I have seen men who once trembled at their problems rise so high that those same problems became nothing but distant memories. But they did not rise by chance. They rose by law. And that law, once understood, can lift any man who obeys it. It lifted Andrew Carnegie from poverty. It lifted Charles Schwab from obscurity. It lifted Henry Ford from exhaustion and ridicule. And it can lift you, no matter how heavy your present burdens feel. Before I reveal this law, I want you to imagine something small yet powerful. Imagine waking one morning without dread. Imagine walking through your home with calm authority instead of tension. Imagine your partner looking at you with pride instead of concern. Imagine your children seeing strength in your posture, not strain. Imagine facing the same problems you have now, yet feeling untouched by them. Imagine seeing them from such a height that they no longer threaten your peace, your confidence, or your future. This is not wishful thinking. This is the natural consequence of rising. But you cannot rise halfway. You cannot rise casually. You cannot rise while clinging to your old fears, your old doubts, your old habits. You must rise fully, decisively, so completely that the world can no longer treat you as the man you used to be. That is why you must listen closely. If you drift while I speak, you will miss the very principle that breaks the chains around your mind. If you skip even a single minute, you will miss the law that separated the weak from the powerful, the defeated from the invincible. Understand this: rising is not about solving all your problems. It is about becoming so strong that your problems lose their power. When a man rises high enough, confusion becomes clarity, fear becomes faith, setbacks become lessons, and obstacles become stepping stones. Picture your future self, 5 years, 3 years, even 1 year from now, standing tall, unshaken, unmoved by the troubles that once crushed you. Picture the day you look back on your old problems and laugh, not because they were small, but because you became massive. Picture the faces of those around you. Your partner watching with quiet awe as you walk into rooms with calm certainty. Your children learning courage by watching your example. Your friends noticing that something in you has changed, your voice firmer, your eyes clearer, your presence stronger. Even your rivals feeling uneasy because you have become someone they can no longer intimidate. This transformation begins with one decision, one moment where a man says, "Enough, I rise." You may think you have made this decision before, but if your life has not changed, then the decision was not complete. A true decision commands the mind, reshapes identity, and alters the course of destiny. And I will show you how to make that decision in a way that lasts, a way that lifts you so high that nothing, no problem, no fear, no critic, no failure can touch you. But you must hear every word. You must remain with me until the final sentence. Miss one moment, and the law loses its strength. Hear all of it, and you will rise. Your current problems are not proof that you are failing. They are proof that life knows you are ready to grow beyond the man you have been. And this message has found you now because the time to rise has arrived. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Stay with me, and I will show you how to climb to a height where your old problems cannot reach, and where the man you become will look back and laugh at the things that once terrified him. A man does not overcome difficulty by wrestling with it on the same level where it was born. He rises above it, expands beyond it, and stands upon an inner height where the problem loses its former power. This is the first law of rising. The size of your problem is measured by the size of the man who confronts it. When a man stands low in spirit, even the smallest trouble can bend him. A late bill, a harsh word, a moment of uncertainty. These strike him with the weight of calamity. But when he rises in thought and builds inward stature, those same troubles shrink into manageable tasks. They do not change. He changes. Carnegie was born into poverty so severe his family shared a single room with no comfort, no certainty, no promise. Yet he grew mentally long before he grew financially. His inner height outpaced his outer situation. Poverty did not erase itself. Carnegie simply rose beyond the reach of its grip. Henry Ford faced ridicule so persistent that most men would have surrendered. His ideas were mocked as impossible. His first business failed. His savings dissolved. Yet he rose in mind before he rose in life. The ridicule continued, but it no longer reached him. He had climbed to a height where doubt could not touch him. Charles Schwab learned something similar. He realized early that a man who rises inwardly gains a power that no environment can limit. He was once a clerk, nothing more. Yet he carried himself with the confidence of one who belonged among leaders. He rose inwardly until the world was forced to recognize the rise. You must understand this principle. Problems strike hardest when a man lives beneath his potential. When he rises, they lose their force. They may still appear, but they cannot break him. They become pebbles beneath the feet instead of stones upon the back. A man who rises carries a stillness that cannot be shaken. He walks through storms with calm judgment while others panic. His family senses the change before his career does. His partner sees a stronger light in his eyes. His children hear a steadier tone in his voice. They do not know what has changed, but they feel safer in his presence. This is why I call it the height of mind. It is a mental elevation where fear thins, where confusion loses form, where doubt fades like mist lifting from a field. At this height, new clarity appears. You begin to see what once frightened you as small, temporary, and unworthy of your worry. But you cannot rise halfway. A man who rises only in moments collapses in the hours between. True rising demands decision, an inner declaration that the former self has reached its end. A man must say to himself, "I refuse to remain small. I refuse to bow to burdens. I rise. Decision creates clarity. Clarity shapes identity. Identity commands action. Action produces elevation. This is the inner elevation method, a sequence followed by every man who outgrew his problems and rose into authority. The first stage is awakening. A man becomes aware that his present stature is too small for the life he desires. There is a discomfort inside him, a pressure pushing outward, telling him he must grow. At this stage, he does not yet rise, but he understands he must. The second stage is the refusal of drift. Drift is the silent erosion of strength. It keeps a man low. It convinces him he is attempting progress while it steals his years. When a man refuses drift, he breaks the cycle that held him in place. This refusal is often the beginning of power. The third stage is declaration. A man speaks aloud the truth he intends to become. He does not whisper it. He states it with command. Declaration is the force that awakens the subconscious and alerts it that a new identity is forming. The fourth stage is disciplined elevation. This is where the real rise occurs. The man strengthens his thought, purifies his motives, orders his mind, and brings dignity to his conduct. He walks, speaks, works, and decides from a higher inner place. The final stage is consolidation. The rise becomes permanent. The man no longer falls back to his former level. His new height becomes his natural state, and the world begins to adjust to the stature he now possesses. A man who rises in this way becomes impossible to intimidate. Pressure does not unsettle him. Doubt cannot bend him. Criticism does not disturb him. He is no longer governed by the reactions of fear. He is governed by purpose. This rise transforms the tone of a man's voice. It becomes steadier, deeper, more certain. His posture changes, shoulders back, chin lifted, eyes calm. People around him sense a new authority. He does not need to announce it. Presence speaks louder than words. Problems that once consumed his days become tasks solved before breakfast. Emotional storms that once stirred his mind now pass without touching him. Conflicts that once sent him into worry now dissolve under the weight of his clarity. A rising man becomes a master of difficulty, not by fighting every problem, but by becoming too large for problems to overwhelm. A man who stands at a high mental altitude sees challenges as stepping stones because he sees farther than those who stay low. Consider Abraham Lincoln. During the darkest hours of the nation, he faced pressures that would crush most men. Yet he rose inwardly. His mind stood above the turmoil. He became larger than the storm. Those around him felt his strength and steadied themselves. Consider Edison. His setbacks were counted by the hundreds, yet his mind stood above each failure. He rose so far beyond discouragement that failure could not reach him. To him, each difficulty was only another ascent, another step upward. A man who does not rise remains trapped. His problems appear larger each year. His worries multiply. His frustrations deepen. He wastes years trying to fix his life without fixing the stature of the man who lives it. This is the tragedy of staying low. It steals time. Years lost to worry. Years lost to drift. Years lost to fear of what a rising man could handle with ease. When a man rises, he saves 10, 20, even 30 years of struggle. The issues that once demanded whole seasons of effort now require only days. The conflicts that once consumed months now resolve themselves because the man no longer feeds them with weakness. The law is simple. Rise first, solve second. A man who tries to solve from a low place makes everything harder. A man who rises before he solves uses clarity instead of confusion, authority instead of fear, direction instead of hesitation. A rising man becomes untouchable because his inner world is no longer shaped by outer conditions. He carries a calm center regardless of noise, pressure, or difficulty. His strength is not borrowed from circumstance. It is generated from within. A man who rises looks back on his former problems and feels almost embarrassed by how much they once frightened him. Not because those problems were small, but because he has become larger. He laughs, not at the hardship, but at his former self. He sees how far he has climbed and understands that fear belonged to a smaller man he no longer is. This is the transformation waiting for you. You need not change your entire life today. You need only rise 1 inch in thought, 1 inch in dignity, 1 inch in decision. Those inches compound. They become feet, then yards, then heights unimaginable to the man you were. And when you rise far enough, nothing, absolutely nothing, can touch you. Affirm this now. I rise in spirit, and nothing can touch me. Strength does not come from muscle, nor from fortune, nor from favorable conditions. It comes from the will of a man who decides he will not bend. When a man carries such will, life itself adjusts to him. Pressure may surround him, but it cannot enter him. Storms may rise, but they cannot disturb his inner stillness. A steady man is not born. He is built. He forges himself in silence, in discipline, in the hours when the world is busy collapsing under its own noise. While others scatter at the first sign of difficulty, he gathers himself tighter. His power grows not from struggle, but from composure. This is the principle of inner steel. It is the quiet strength that holds a man upright when circumstances try to push him to the ground. Inner steel cannot be borrowed, it cannot be inherited, it cannot be purchased. It must be forged through disciplined thought and unwavering self-respect. Charles Schwab possessed such steel. He began as a clerk, earning no privilege and commanding no authority. Yet he walked with a calm confidence that unsettled men far above him in rank. They sensed something in him they could not explain, a steadiness that signaled future leadership. Long before he rose in position, he rose in composure. Abraham Lincoln demonstrated inner steel during the nation's most perilous years. While the country fractured and advisors trembled, Lincoln remained steady. His voice held a controlled gravity. His posture conveyed quiet strength. His inner calm steadied an entire nation. Men follow those who remain unbroken under pressure. John D. Rockefeller faced storms that would have destroyed ordinary men. During the national financial panic, when banks fell and businessmen collapsed into fear, Rockefeller walked the streets with calm eyes. He evaluated, calculated, and acted with serene precision. Panic could not enter him. His steadiness became a fortress. This same steadiness is available to any man who chooses to discipline his will. It is built intentionally. It begins with the decision to no longer be governed by fear. A man must declare that his will, not his worry, will direct his days. The transformation begins internally. Before the voice steadies, the thought steadies. Before the posture strengthens, the conviction strengthens. Before the man appears strong to the world, he becomes strong to himself. A man who is steady holds 3 anchors within him: self-respect, disciplined will, and accurate thinking. Self-respect is the foundation. A man cannot be steady if he speaks to himself as though he were weak, incapable, or doomed. He must honor his own potential. He must look at his life and say, I am worthy of stability. I am worthy of command. Disciplined will is the second anchor. It is the ability to act in alignment with his decisions, even when fear presses upon him. The steady man does not collapse when difficulty arrives. He holds his course. He does not rush, react, or retreat. He moves with purpose. Accurate thinking is the third anchor. Fear produces distorted thought. Anxiety magnifies shadows into giants. But accurate thinking cuts through the noise. It allows the man to see clearly, judge wisely, and respond intelligently. With accurate thinking, he stands firm even when others panic. Steadiness is silent power. People feel it before they understand it. A man with inner steel enters a room and the atmosphere shifts, not because he demands attention, but because he carries direction. His presence speaks of order, certainty, and resolve. Your family will feel this change first. Your partner will notice that your reactions are calmer. Your tone becomes deeper, slower, more deliberate. Your children sense that the foundation beneath them is firm. They lean toward your steadiness and draw strength from it. Rivals sense it as well. A steady man cannot be provoked easily. He does not flinch under criticism. He does not crumble under unexpected pressure. Those who once tested him begin to retreat, for they can no longer shake him. Conflict dissolves because the steady man does not feed it with agitation. Fear dissolves when a man strengthens his will. Fear thrives only in a weak mental climate. When the will becomes disciplined, fear loses its footing. It cannot rule a man who stands firmly upon his own decisions. This is the law. Problems lose power when a man refuses to bend. Life respects the unshakable. There is a profound truth here. Steadiness saves decades. A man who collapses at every difficulty wastes years recovering from crises that a steady man dismisses with calm reasoning. Weakness magnifies trouble. Steadiness dissolves it. A steady man avoids emotional collapse. He does not make decisions in panic. He does not rush into mistakes. He does not retreat into regret. He moves according to principle, not impulse. This alone saves him 20 years of error. Rockefeller once said that his greatest advantage was not opportunity, but calmness. While others acted out of fear, he acted from reason. While others gambled with their future, he shaped his future with quiet calculation. Calmness is not softness. It is strength under perfect control. A man who is steady becomes interesting to opportunity. Employers trust him. Partners rely on him. Leaders notice him. He becomes the man others seek when pressure grows because he remains composed when others falter. Such steadiness is visible. It appears in the way he stands, upright, aligned without rush. It appears in the way he speaks, measured, thoughtful, confident. It appears in his eyes, focused, serene, unwavering. A man with inner steel earns respect without demanding it. His actions speak. His conduct speaks. His presence speaks. But steadiness does not grow in comfort. It grows under pressure. The man must willingly step into controlled challenge. He must train himself to remain calm when life attempts to disturb his spirit. This is how the will becomes disciplined. The rising man practices stillness. He sits with his thoughts until they align. He speaks slowly when emotion tempts him to speak quickly. He acts with intention when stress tempts him to act impulsively. In these small victories, inner steel is forged. Steadiness gives birth to a new identity, the man who does not shake. Once this identity forms, life responds differently. Trouble no longer pursues him because trouble seeks the weak, not the strong. Difficulty seeks a target. The steady man presents none. Imagine yourself steady to this degree. Imagine walking through challenges with a calm heart. Imagine responding to pressure with clear judgment. Imagine your family watching you with admiration as you move through difficulty without fear. This identity changes everything. Your work improves because your mind is clear. Your decisions strengthen because your emotions are anchored. Your future opens because others trust you. Your home stabilizes because you become the stable center. A steady man becomes the axis around which order forms. People gather around him because he gives certainty in a world full of unstable men. They rely on him because his conduct is consistent. They respect him because he carries authority without arrogance. Fear cannot root itself in such a man. Doubt cannot hold on to his mind. Anxiety cannot lower his strength. He does not react to conditions. He governs them through ordered thought. When a man becomes steady, a transformation unfolds quietly within him. He becomes larger in spirit. He rises in dignity. He gains a weight of presence that cannot be shaken by circumstance. Steadiness is not merely emotional maturity. It is power in its purest form. It is the force that separates a man who is ruled by his life from the man who governs his life. Affirm this truth: my will is steady, therefore life cannot shake me. A man cannot fight his way out of every difficulty. Some battles are won not by force, but by altitude. When a man rises high enough in thought, the problem that once terrified him becomes too small to threaten him. The mind must climb before the life can climb. This is the beginning of mental ascension. Mental ascension is not mystery, it is discipline. It is the act of lifting your inner viewpoint above the region where fear, doubt, and confusion reside. The lower region of the mind is crowded with old worries, past failures, and weak habits. A man remains trapped there until he learns to rise deliberately. To ascend in mind is to climb to a clearer air where thought is sharp, will is strong, and judgment is unclouded. From this height, the world looks different. Pressure becomes manageable. Setbacks become signals. Uncertainty becomes direction. Everything changes when the viewpoint rises. Few men ever rise because they believe they must first escape their problems. But the wise man escapes not by running outward, but by climbing inward. He rises until the problem remains below him. No fear can reach the man who has climbed above it. No difficulty can overwhelm a mind that stands higher than its troubles. There are 7 steps of mental ascension, and each step lifts a man out of the region where weakness thrives. These steps are not complicated. They are not beyond the reach of any earnest man. They require only discipline and repetition. Step 1. Break the lower thought pattern. A man cannot rise while allowing the same thoughts that weakened him to circulate without resistance. He must interrupt the lower rhythm. He must catch the fear as it enters, name it, and refuse it. Space 1. Interruption of doubt is a victory. One victory begins the climb. Step 2. Declare elevation. No man rises accidentally. He rises because he speaks it into motion. To declare, "I rise above this," is to begin the ascent. A spoken declaration imprints itself upon the subconscious, and the subconscious begins to support the upward direction. Words are ladders when spoken with conviction. Step 3. Adopt an elevated thought. A man must choose the thought that represents the height he wishes to reach. It may be confidence, clarity, purpose, or peace. Once chosen, he must hold it as a captain holds a compass. The mind follows the direction of its dominant thought. Elevation requires a thought worthy of height. Step 4. Build identity from the higher position. Once the elevated thought is accepted, the man must begin to think as though he already stands at the height he seeks. He must reason from strength, not weakness. Decisions made from weakness keep him low. Decisions made from strength lift him higher. Step 5. Act from altitude. A man who rises must act like a man who has risen. He must speak calmly, choose wisely, and move with dignity. Action reinforces identity. Identity reinforces thought, and thought reinforces altitude. Every elevated action strengthens the ascent. Step 6. Hold the height. The mind may attempt to descend, for old fears cling to familiar ground, but the rising man must refuse to drop back to the lower region. He must guard his altitude. He must reject the thoughts that attempt to pull him downward. Height becomes permanent through vigilance. Step 7. Expand the viewpoint. When a man holds his height long enough, his vision expands. He sees paths he could not see before. Ideas appear that were invisible at lower levels. New associations, new opportunities, new strategies arise. Height brings clarity, and clarity multiplies growth. Carnegie used mental ascension before he had a single dollar to his name. As a young boy in the mills, he refused to think like a mill worker. He thought like a leader long before he became one. He spoke with purpose. He walked with direction. Though his wage was small, his altitude was high. Edison practiced mental ascension during his early failures. When his experiments collapsed, he rose above the collapse in thought. He said, "I have discovered another way that does not work." That sentence was not denial. It was ascent. Each failure became a step upward. because he refused to reason from the lower region. Henry Ford thought from altitude when his first automobiles broke apart, when investors mocked him, when early factories struggled. He held the higher vision. He rose above every difficulty because he kept his thought anchored to the height he intended to reach. Mental ascension saves years. A man who remains in the lower region spends decades wrestling with problems that could be dissolved by one rise in thought confusion, fear, uncertainty. These are not obstacles. They are signals that the mind is standing too low. A man becomes trapped when he attempts to solve problems from the same level where the problems were created. Rising in thought gives him an entirely new set of tools, insights, and strategies. Height reveals solutions hidden from those who refuse to climb. There is a difference between horizontal motion and vertical motion. Horizontal motion is effort without elevation. It is the endless activity of a man who stays low while trying to run his way out of difficulty. He works harder but remains overwhelmed because his perspective never rises. Vertical motion is the disciplined upward climb. It is the moment a man stops exhausting himself with sideways struggle and lifts his mind above the chaos. From this height, one wise action replaces 1,000 frantic motions. Mental ascension is the foundation of mastery. A man who rises above his fear stops negotiating with it. He stops reacting to the world and begins directing it. He stops allowing circumstances to shape him and begins shaping circumstances. This is the practice of upper thought. Upper thought is thinking from the version of yourself that is already strong, already clear, already disciplined. It is thinking from altitude rather than weakness. It is deciding from height rather than hesitation. When a man practices upper thought, his problems lose their teeth. They cannot bite into a consciousness standing above them. He no longer asks, "What will happen to me?" Instead, he asks, "What must I do from where I stand?" His power increases because his perspective has risen. This rise in thought affects his entire environment. His family notices that his speech becomes calm and directed. His children see that he is no longer shaken by small inconveniences. His partner feels safer, for she senses that he is thinking from strength. A rising man strengthens his home through his presence alone. Mental ascension changes how others see him. Employers recognize new reliability. Colleagues trust his judgment. Rivals grow uneasy, for they cannot intimidate a man whose mind stands above their reach. Opportunity is drawn to altitude. Difficulty avoids it. A man who ascends in mind becomes a magnet for clarity. He wastes no time on emotional traps, petty conflicts, or fear-driven decisions. Every choice he makes is elevated, and elevation compounds. 1 year of ascension is equal to 10 years of ordinary struggle. When the mind rises, the life rises. When the thought lifts, the future lifts. When the inner altitude increases, the outer world reorganizes itself accordingly. This is why mental ascension is the great shortcut. It saves a man 20 years of confusion. Mental ascension transforms a man's relationship with adversity. Instead of resisting it, he outgrows it. Instead of fearing it, he studies it from above. Instead of collapsing, he climbs. Adversity becomes the very fuel that sharpens his strength. Imagine yourself rising to this height. Imagine thinking from the version of yourself who no longer trembles. Imagine walking into each day with an elevated mind, untouched by the noise beneath you. Imagine the freedom of feeling stronger than any problem that approaches. Affirm this truth. My mind climbs higher each day, therefore I outgrow every obstacle. A man may change his habits and still remain weak. He may change his schedule and still remain doubtful. He may change his surroundings and still remain fragile. For no change is lasting until the man changes the identity from which he thinks, decides, and acts. Identity is destiny. A man rises or falls according to the image he holds of himself. If he sees himself as one who struggles, he will live in struggle. If he sees himself as one whom problems can break, they will break him. But if he sees himself as the man who stands above difficulty, life must rearrange itself around that identity. A man must become in spirit the thing he desires to be in fact. Before the world can treat him as strong, he must treat himself as strong. Before circumstances honor him, he must honor his own potential. Identity precedes fortune. Andrew Carnegie built his identity long before he owned anything. As a young messenger boy, he told himself, "I am rising." He studied language, business, and people with the seriousness of a man preparing for leadership. Though his wages were small, his identity was vast. The world could not keep him small because he refused to see himself that way. Charles Schwab carried an identity of assurance even when he held no rank. His employer once said, "I promoted him before I understood why. I simply trusted him." That trust was drawn not from achievement, but from identity. Schwab walked with the bearing of a man who would soon lead. Edward Bach transformed himself from a timid office boy into an influential editor by first changing who he believed himself to be. He wrote letters to powerful men, studied their methods, observed their conduct, and adopted their manner of thought. He became in thought long before he became in fact. Identity is not fiction. It is the internal command that governs the subconscious, and the subconscious governs behavior, tone, presence, and ultimately, destiny. A man cannot rise above the identity he clings to. He must construct the man he seeks to become. This construction requires two tools, repetition and conviction. The subconscious accepts only what is repeated with emotional certainty. A man who repeats, "I am strong," but feels weak, builds nothing. But a man who repeats, "I rise above all that once troubled me," while feeling the pull of greatness, plants a seed that cannot die. Identity construction begins with speech. A rising man speaks to himself with firmness, not apology. He declares what he is becoming, not what he fears he is. His speech becomes his blueprint. His words shape his character. His declarations carry the weight of command. From speech, the transformation extends into thought. He thinks from the viewpoint of the man he is becoming. When problems arise, he asks, "How would the stronger version of me see this?" He reasons from his future, not his past. This single shift saves years of misjudgment. This new identity alters his posture. When a man believes he is rising, his shoulders lift, his breath deepens, his movements become deliberate. He carries himself with dignity. Others sense it before he speaks. A rising identity radiates through the body. Identity sharpens judgment. The old identity was reactive, emotional, unstable. The new identity is deliberate, calm, and clear. Decisions become easier because the man knows who he is becoming. Choices align with purpose, not with fear. Identity changes the company he keeps. Weak identities attract weak associations. Strong identities attract strong ones. As the man rises, he becomes uncomfortable among the faint-hearted. He seeks those who think boldly, act decisively, and carry themselves with authority. Identity attracts opportunity. Employers, partners, and leaders can feel when a man has changed internally. They notice the strength in his voice, the steadiness in his eyes, the certainty in his conduct. They trust him without knowing why. His identity speaks louder than his resume. Identity protects a man from old patterns. When the new identity is strong, the man no longer thinks like the one who struggled. He no longer fears like the one who hesitated. He no longer retreats like the one who doubted. The old patterns lose their grip because the old man they relied upon no longer exists. This is the untouchable identity, a state in which trouble cannot reach the man, not because life becomes easier, but because he becomes greater. Problems attempt to enter, but they find no weakness in which to anchor. Fear approaches, but it finds no doorway. The man becomes larger than anything that once discouraged him. He becomes a mountain, and problems become passing clouds. He becomes a pillar, and difficulties become brief shadows. He becomes too elevated for trouble to reach. Constructing the untouchable identity begins with the rejection of the old self. The man must stop thinking from the identity of the man who struggled. He must stop excusing himself with former stories. He must strip away the identity of fear, weakness, and drift. Then he must adopt the identity of a man who rises above all difficulty. He must speak, act, walk, and decide from this identity. He must hold it with devotion until it becomes natural. Repetition makes the identity real. A rising identity transforms a man's household. His spouse sees the change before anyone else. She notices the calm in his voice, the steadiness in his behavior, the certainty he carries even on difficult days. She begins to trust him more deeply because he trusts himself. His children learn courage by watching him. They see their father standing firm, thinking clearly, facing problems with strength. His identity becomes their inheritance. They learn strength not by lectures, but by example. His colleagues respond differently. They trust him because he is trustworthy. They follow him because he knows where he is going. They rely on his counsel because it comes from clarity. His identity commands respect. Rivals grow uneasy. They sense that the man no longer trembles. They see that he no longer responds to provocation. They feel the weight of his rising spirit. They realize he is no longer vulnerable. A strong identity unsettles those who thrive on weakness. Identity determines reactions. The old identity was startled by criticism. The new identity evaluates it calmly. The old identity avoided challenge. The new identity welcomes it as an opportunity to rise. The old identity felt overwhelmed. The new identity feels unmoved. Identity determines habits. The rising man wakes earlier, speaks with intention, plans his days, controls his thoughts, and honors his commitments. These habits do not require force. They flow naturally from who he believes himself to be. Identity determines standards. The rising man refuses behaviors he once tolerated. He holds himself to a higher level of conduct. He rejects mediocrity. He avoids gossip, complaint, and emotional outbursts. He carries himself like one preparing for leadership. Identity determines destiny. The man who believes he is rising becomes unstoppable. The man who believes he is strong cannot be broken. The man who believes he is unshakable cannot be moved. Life honors the man who honors himself. This rise is permanent. No hardship can pull down a man whose identity stands above difficulty. Even when storms strike, he remains composed. Even when setbacks occur, he remains focused. Identity becomes his shield. Imagine yourself as this man. Imagine standing before your challenges with calm power. Imagine moving through life with dignity, confidence, and order. Imagine feeling untouchable, not because life is easy, but because you are immovable. Your identity is your greatest weapon. It is the source of your rise. It is the foundation of your future. It is the shield that protects your spirit. When identity rises, your entire life ascends with it. Affirm this truth with conviction. I become the man trouble cannot touch. There comes a time in a man's journey when rising is no longer an act. It becomes his nature. He does not lift himself from difficulty because he is in trouble, but because height has become his rightful place. Trouble may approach, but it finds him standing too high to reach. To live at such a height is not arrogance, it is order. It is the proper state of a man who has disciplined his mind, steadied his will, strengthened his identity, and learned the law governing all ascent. When these forces unite, they create a level of consciousness untouched by fear. A man at height is not removed from the world. He simply stands above the turmoil that once captured him. He hears the noise of the lower mind, but does not descend into it. He sees the storms forming on the horizon, but does not fear their arrival. His thought remains calm, his spirit remains steady, and his decisions remain directed. This state is what I call dominant height, a level of inner elevation so firm that life cannot pull the man downward. The man becomes the fixed point in his world. Circumstances revolve around him, not over him. He becomes the axis upon which his environment turns. To reach dominant height is rare, but to maintain it is rarer still. Most men climb once, collapse, climb again, collapse again. They rise occasionally, but live mostly in descent. They do not understand that height must be protected by discipline. Dominant height is built upon three practices: high-level thought, daily purpose declaration, and evening correction. These practices are the pillars that keep a man above the region where fear operates. High-level thought each morning lifts the mind before the day attempts to push it down. A rising man does not wait for the world to tell him how to feel. He declares his posture before events can shape him. He wakes with a clear intention: I stand above whatever the day brings. This morning elevation gives him a view of his life from strength, not from weakness. He sees opportunities quickly. He senses misdirection early. He chooses wisely because he sees clearly. Height sharpens judgment. The second pillar is daily purpose declaration. A man who rises must give his mind a direction each day. He must speak aloud the purpose that governs his life. Purpose becomes his compass. Without it, even a strong man drifts downward. Purpose declaration is not mere recitation. It is the reaffirmation of identity. It tells the subconscious, I know who I am and I know where I am going. This declaration keeps the mind fixed at altitude. The third pillar is evening correction, the practice of reviewing the day without guilt, without shame, without emotional collapse. The rising man examines his conduct with accuracy. He does not hide from his weaknesses, he strengthens them. He does not condemn his errors, he corrects them. Evening correction keeps the man aligned. It prevents dissent. It ensures that each day ends with improvement rather than regret. In 5 years, this practice alone can elevate a man beyond anything he imagines. Consider how these practices shaped history. Lincoln maintained height through deliberate stillness. Even in the midst of war, he sought quiet moments to steady his spirit. That stillness kept him operating from altitude. Without it, the pressures of the nation would have crushed him. Rockefeller practiced mental altitude during the darkest financial terrors. While men panicked, he stood above the panic. He made decisions not from fear, but from calm reasoning. That height turned crises into opportunities. Henry Ford remained at altitude despite ridicule, failure, and opposition. He saw his future long before it existed. When others doubted him, he held the high viewpoint. Height gave him patience. Patience gave him triumph. To live at height is to look upon difficulty from a superior position. The problem does not change, but the man does. When the man becomes larger, the problem becomes smaller. When the man stands higher, the problem stands lower. Height gives a man immunity to discouragement. Discouragement only grips a man who stands close enough for its hands to reach him. Rise above discouragement, and it becomes powerless. It cannot speak to you, for your mind has moved beyond its language. Height gives a man clarity in chaos. Confusion thrives in the lower regions where the mind is scattered. But at altitude, clarity reigns. A single elevated thought cuts through noise that once caused paralysis. Height gives a man calm during conflict. When others act from agitation, he acts from inner order. He does not fight battles beneath him. He chooses his engagements wisely. His calmness intimidates those who rely on noise. Height gives a man certainty in uncertainty. He may not know the full path, but he knows the direction. He may not see every step, but he sees the summit. Certainty is not the absence of mystery. It is the presence of direction. Height gives a man power over his environment. Weak men are shaped by surroundings. Strong men shape their surroundings. At altitude, he becomes the influence rather than being influenced. Most important of all, height gives a man freedom from old fears. Fear resides below. It cannot cling to a man who no longer stands near it. When the man rises high enough, fear falls away like a garment no longer worn. To stay at height, a man must protect his mind from 4 sources of dissent: lower emotions, lower associations, lower speech, and lower habits. Lower emotions, fear, envy, resentment, pull the mind downward. The rising man meets these emotions with accuracy. He observes them without surrender. He holds his altitude by refusing to be ruled by the lower climate. Lower associations, men who complain, gossip, or drift, attempt to pull him down through their influence. He must choose his company wisely. A rising man cannot remain long among those who refuse to rise. Lower speech weakens identity. A man who speaks of limitation is building his own chains. His words must match the height he seeks. He must speak with calm certainty, not gloom or doubt. Lower habits drain strength. Late rising, idle distraction, scattered focus. These habits keep a man low. At height, habits must support elevation. Discipline becomes nourishment for the spirit. Living at height transforms the home. A man at height rarely raises his voice because his authority is calm. His spouse feels safer because the man is steady. His children grow stronger because they learn by witnessing strength. The atmosphere of the home lifts because the foundation has risen. Living at height transforms work. Assignments that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Conflict becomes opportunity. Pressure becomes fuel. The rising man becomes the one others rely on. His influence expands because his clarity is uncommon. Living at height transforms finances. A mind at altitude makes fewer mistakes. It sees long-term gain instead of short-term escape. It invests wisely. It avoids impulsive decisions. Wealth grows naturally when the mind is not cluttered by fear. Living at height transforms self-respect. The rising man looks in the mirror and sees someone he can follow. He sees dignity. He sees direction. He sees a man growing beyond his former limitations. Self-respect becomes the engine of further ascent. The man at height does not mock his past self. He honors the struggle that brought him here. But he does laugh at the fears that once dominated him, not because the fears were foolish, but because he has become so strong that they now appear small. At height, the world treats him differently. His presence commands attention without effort. His words carry weight without force. His conduct inspires quiet respect. Even his silence becomes meaningful. Trouble that once crushed him now bounces off him harmlessly. Criticism that once discouraged him now teaches him. Setbacks that once delayed him now redirect him. He becomes invulnerable, not because life improves, but because he becomes greater. This is the man who walks through storms while remaining dry. This is the man who carries calmness through chaos. This is the man who looks at former worries and wonders how they ever frightened him. This height is not temporary. It can become permanent. A man who holds his altitude long enough begins to see himself as one who belongs there. Identity solidifies. Confidence becomes effortless. Purpose becomes instinct. The untouchable man is not one who avoids problems. He is one who rises above them. His strength is not force. It is elevation. His power is not aggression. It is presence. His mastery is not domination. It is composure. Imagine yourself living at this height. Imagine waking each day with a calm spirit. Imagine moving through difficulty without fear. Imagine speaking with authority and thinking with clarity. Imagine feeling in every part of your being that nothing on earth can touch your peace. This is the promise of ascent. When a man rises high enough, nothing can touch him. Affirm this truth with unwavering conviction. Nothing can touch me because I stand above all that once weakened me.